Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi. Today, doing new Masechta. We've done Daf 2 Amud A. Now we're going to do Daf 2 Amud B of Bekhorot. Malav Ibo Lo Abhema. What is it not referring to the fetus when the Brisa states that he is not permitted to sell it? The Gemara responds no, it's referring to the animal itself, and he may not sell it to a Gentile, and that is why he is penalized. So what does that mean? No Abhema. One explanation of this answer cited in Tosfot is that the Jew gave the Gentile an animal that was not yet pregnant, with the intention that the Gentile would receive a portion of the future offspring. As Gemara later in 3a interprets this Brisa, this transaction then would be forbidden according to Rabbi Yehuda, as the Gemara will discuss later on this Amud. As evident from the conclusion of Tosfot, there is another explanation of the Gemara's answer. The Brisa refers to a case where he gave the mother animal to the Gentile in order to fatten her. If so, the Gemara's point is that giving the animal for this purpose in receivership is forbidden, and the animal not rest on Shabbat while in the possession of the Gentile. See Shita Mishkul Beses. The Gemara asks, but doesn't the Brisa teach the sages penalize him up to 10 times its value, the mav, in masculine form, indicating that it refers to the fetus, not the mother? The Gemara responds, teaching the following wording in the Brisa: the sages penalize him up to 10 times its value. The word is the meha, in feminine form. The Gemara asks, but doesn't it teach he gives all of its value to the priest? And if it's referring to an animal, not the firstborn, what is the relevance of the priest? The Gemara answers, here we are dealing with a case where the Jew gave the Gentile a pregnant animal to fatten it in order to divide the profits as well as the offspring. Since we penalize him for selling the animal in a prohibited manner, we penalize in regard to the fetus as well. Now Rashi says, Tashema, come in here, resolution from a Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda deems the sale to a Gentile of a damaged animal permitted because it is incapable of being cured. This statement indicates that if it was capable of being cured, Rabbi Yehuda deems its sale prohibited. And a fetus is also similar to the one who is able to be cured, as it ultimately will be capable of working. Learn from it that Rabbi Yehuda deems the sale of a fetus to a Gentile prohibited. And there are those who teach this discussion as referring to the statement in the Mishnah with regard to one who sells the fetus of his donkey to a Gentile. Although he is not permitted to sell a large animal to a Gentile, it is exempt from the obligation of firstborn status. This discussion then proceeded as follows. Let us say that the Mishnah is not in accord with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as we learned in the Mishnah, Avodah 14b. Rabbi Yehuda deems the sale of a damaged animal permitted because it is incapable of performing labor. The halacha is presumably the same with regard to a fetus, which is also not capable of performing labor. The Gemara responds, you may even say that it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as it is permitted to sell a damaged animal because that is not its natural state, it is defective, and is therefore not included in the prohibition against selling large livestock. But with regard to a fetus, since it is in its natural state and will become capable of working after growing up, perhaps it is not considered damaged as it is not defective. The Gemara suggests, come and hear another proof from a Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says that in the case of one who receives an animal from a Gentile to care for and receives a portion of the offspring in exchange for his work, and it gave birth to a firstborn, they assess its value, and the Jew gives half of its value to the priest to redeem his portion, which is sanctified by the firstborn status. And in the case of one who gives a Gentile to an animal in receivership, even though he is not permitted to do so, the sages penalize him by requiring that he purchase the Gentile's portion of the animal for up to 10 times his value, and he gives all of his value to the priest. What is it not referring to the fetus when the Brisa states that he is not permitted to sell it? The Gemara responds, no, it is referring to the animal itself, that he may not sell to a Gentile. And that is why he's penalized. The Gemara asks, but doesn't the Brisa teach the sages penalize him up to 10 times his value, the mav, in masculine form, indicating that it is referring to the fetus and not the mother? The Gemara responds, teach the following wording in the Brisa. The sages penalize him up to 10 times his value, the meha, in feminine form. The Gemara asks, but doesn't it teach he gives all of its value to the priest? And if it is referring to the animal and not the firstborn, what is the relevance of the priest? The Gemara answers, here we are dealing with a case where the Jew gave the Gentile a pregnant animal to fatten it in order to divide the profits as well as the offspring. Since we penalize him for selling the animal in a prohibited manner, we penalize with regard to the fetus as well. Rav says, Tashama, common here, resolution from a Baita. Rabbi Yehuda deemed the sale to a Gentile of a damaged animal permitted because this is incapable of being cured. This statement indicates that if it is capable of being cured, Rabbi Yehuda deems its sale prohibited. And this fetus is also similar to one who is able to be cured, as it ultimately will be capable of working. Learn from it that Rabbi Yehuda deems the sale of a fetus to a Gentile prohibited. A dilemma was raised before the sages concerning the prohibition against selling large livestock to a Gentile. In the case of a Jew who has sold an animal to a Gentile only with regard to its rights to its fetuses, but retained ownership of the animal itself, what is a halacha concerning the permissibility of the sale? The dilemma refers to a situation where the animal is not yet pregnant, but one who sells the right to the future fetuses. Therefore, unlike the Gemara's inquiry on 2a whether Rabbi Yehuda allows selling the actual fetuses, there is no reason to prohibit the sale due to the fetuses, and says Rashi. In addition, the concern of the animal being removed from the sanctity of resting on Shabbat is also not relevant here, as the animal belongs to the Jew and is therefore forbidden for a Gentile to work it at all. Rather, the reason for the dilemma is that perhaps the sale should be forbidden due to a concern that others may confuse this case with that of a complete sale of the animal to a Gentile, and conclude that such a sale is also permitted. The Gemara clarifies, let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who permits the sale of a damaged animal, and let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of the rabbis who dispute that ruling. The Gemara elaborates, let the dilemma be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda as follows. Perhaps Rabbi Yehuda permits only the sale of a damaged animal, as people will not come to confuse the animal with a healthy animal, and to be prohibited for sale to a Gentile, as they are visibly different. But in the case of one who sells an unblemished animal with regard to the rights of its fetuses, which people come to confuse the case of selling the animal entirely and consider that sale permitted as well, Rabbi Yehuda deems the sale prohibited. Or perhaps Rabbi Yehuda would claim that in the case of a damaged animal which is separated from in its entirety in the sale is permitted, and all the more so with regard to the sale of an unblemished animal with regard to the rights of its fetuses, where the animal is not entirely separated from him, as he did not sell the actual animal, the sale is permitted. Likewise, the dilemma can be raised according to the opinion of the rabbis. Perhaps the rabbis deem the sale prohibited only in the case of a damaged animal, as the animal is separated from him. But in the case of an unblemished animal that is sold only with regard to the fetuses, where it is not separated from him, and there is no concern that people will mistakenly sell the entire animal to a Gentile, they deem the sale permitted. Or perhaps the rabbis would claim that in the case of a damaged animal, which people will not come to confuse with the case of an unblemished animal, the rabbis deem the sale prohibited, and all the more so will they prohibit selling an unblemished animal with regard to the rights of its fetuses, which people come to confuse with the case of selling an unblemished animal in its entirety. The Gemara asks, and what is the reason of the opinion of the rabbis due to that concern that people may confuse the sale of a damaged animal with the sale of an unblemished animal in its entirety? But isn't it taught in a Braita that the rabbis said to Rabbi Yehuda, but why do you hold that it's permitted to sell a damaged animal? Don't they breed it with another animal and it gives birth to offspring, which will then be owned by a Gentile? Apparently the reason is that the rabbis prohibited sale due to the animal's fetuses. If so, they should prohibit selling large livestock to a Gentile with regard to fetuses as well. The Gemara answers, this is not truly the rabbi's opinion. Rather, this is what they were saying to Rabbi Yehuda. One reason for prohibiting the sale of a damaged animal is because people might come to confuse this case with the sale of an unblemished animal. But what is the reason that you permit selling a damaged animal? It is because the animal is incapable of being cured, and you therefore consider it similar to the one who sold an animal explicitly for slaughter, which is permitted. Rabbi Gershom or Hagola adds that one who purchases an animal for slaughtering generally slaughters it immediately. Therefore, no concern exists that others will see the animal in the possession of the Gentile and mistakenly conclude that it is permitted to sell him a healthy animal. But actually, it is not similar to that case, as don't they breed a damaged animal with another animal and it gives birth? And since they breed it and it gives birth, the Gentile will delay its slaughter. Others may then mistakenly believe that selling large livestock for purposes other than slaughter is permitted. And Rabbi Yehuda said to the rabbis in response, when a damaged animal actually gives birth, I will concern myself with this possibility. Practically, this concern may be disregarded, as such an animal cannot breed with a male, In any case, no proof may be brought from this Braita concerning the opinion of the rabbis concerning selling an animal with regard to the rights of its fetuses. The Gemara suggests, come to hear a proof from the Mishnah, where it states, and in the case of one who gives his donkey to a Gentile in receivership, meaning that he divides the offspring with him in exchange for caring for the animal, the donkey is exempt from the obligations of the firstborn status. This case is identical to that of selling an animal with regard to the rights in its fetuses. And the Mishnah does not teach, although he is not permitted to do so. Apparently such a sale is permitted. The Gemara responds, but according to your reasoning with regard to that which the Mishnah states, one who enters into a partnership with a Gentile, where it also does not teach, although he is not permitted to do so, so too should it be derived that it is permitted to enter into such a partnership. But doesn't Shmuel's father say it is prohibited for a person to enter into a partnership with a Gentile? So what's the footnote? Also, one should be careful not to enter a partnership with a Gentile, as a Gentile might eventually be obligated to take an oath to him in the name of his God, and a Jew would thereby transgress the prohibition of neither let it be heard out of your mouth, as stated by Shmuel's father. Some authorities, such as the Ramah, citing Tosfot here, allowing entering into a partnership with Christians because they do not take oath by pagan gods. Their references to God are to the creator of the world. Though they invoke other entities together with God, Gentiles are not prohibited from invoking God alongside other additional forces. Therefore, there is no violation of the prohibition against causing another to sin. You shall not place a stumbling block before the blind, Leviticus 19:14, when one causes a Christian to take an oath. Rambam Sefer Kinin, Hilchos Shulachin Ushutafim 5:10, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 156:1, and the Comment Numah Yodei 143:3. Lest their joint ventures lead them to quarrel, and his Gentile partner will be obligated to take an oath to him, and he will take an oath in the name of his object of idol worship. And the Torah states, neither let it be heard out of your mouth, Exodus 23:13, which includes causing a Gentile to take an oath in the name of an idol. Rather, the Tana taught that a sale to a Gentile is not permitted, and the same is true for the case of a partnership. So too the Tana taught that a sale to a Gentile is prohibited, and the same is true for the case of receivership. The Gemara asks, and what is different about the case of selling that the Tana cites prohibition specifically in that case? The Gemara answers that the primary prohibition is that of selling the animal to a Gentile. The Gemara suggests, common here resolution to the dilemma of whether selling an animal to a Gentile with regard to the rights to its fetuses is permitted from a Braita. Rabbi Yehuda says that in the case of one who receives an animal from a Gentile to care for and receives a portion of the offspring in exchange for his work, and it gave birth to a firstborn, they assess its value, and the Jew gives half of his value to the priest to redeem his portion, which is considered to have the sanctity of a firstborn. And in the case of one who gives the Gentile an animal in receivership, even though he is not permitted to do so, he should penalize him by requiring that he purchase the Gentile's portion of the animal for up to 10 times its value, and he gives all of his value to the priest. And the rabbis say, as long as the ownership of the Gentile is involved, and that he possesses at least a partial ownership of the mother or the fetus, and is exempt from its offspring being counted as a firstborn. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening, and take care. All the best. Bye.